I paint things that you can't take pictures of. I feel that this is what it is. It's the movement. It's not the beginning, it's not the end. But what I try to do is that space between the beginning and the ending, which is the action itself. And in trying to put this into a flat surface or onto a flat surface, you are trying to produce an experience. And the experience, to me, is more important than the artist, than the artwork, or than the beholder. But one is nothing without all three, and all three are nothing that is a physical thing that you can grasp and hold on to, but an experience, and each experience is different for each person. I had come to the islands and lived in the islands and gone through the islands or visited in the islands many, many times, but it never ever occurred to me that you could live in Hawaii. Hawaii was a place that you visited. And one day when I was sitting in Australia with much unhappiness, I said, well, why don't I go to Hawaii and live? And I said, and live? Well, yes, one could live in Hawaii, but it never occurred to me that one actually could live there. So I packed up and I came home to live. And home, this has felt more like home than any other place that I've ever lived. And I think that's the same feeling with the artwork. The artwork was something that I had always done. I had always played around with. I had always enjoyed. But until I got, like going to Kauai, until I got there, at that particular stage of time, that particular stage of maturity, when I said, oh, fine, artwork, well, this is going to be what I'm going to want to do. But, I mean, it didn't happen overnight. It was a process of getting up to this particular area. And when I first started working, when I was on Kauai, I did not think of myself professionally. I was doing what I was doing because it was something to do before doing something else, actually. And it was, the artwork was there, the surroundings were there. I didn't actually go to Kauai to do batik work, but when I got there, it formulated into this. And I grasped hold of it, and I thought, well, when I had finally, 2-3 years later, when there were some works which I felt were justified in showing to other individuals and expecting other individuals to come and see them, then I began to take it really seriously that, well, perhaps this is something that I really should do and apply my full time to. And it happened, it evolved in this particular kind of manner. But in actuality, I do other things too. I'm pretty well wrapped up in the life of our island. I'm extremely interested in saving as much of the natural beauty of it that we can right now. And even right on our bay at this particular point, there is a fight between those who want to preserve the natural beauty of the island and those who want to build commercial buildings on the island. And consequently, I find myself spread in many different directions, not only with just my artwork, but with preserving the island, the politics of the island, the young people, not only of the island, but all over the United States and the world. Kauai to me has been a real returning to the womb. It's warm, it's secure, it's beautiful, all the needs are provided without too many of the physical problems that one runs into with bad weather. And I do love good weather, lovely beaches, nice warm climate. And so this has provided a physical warmth, a physical love. It provides a visual beauty that's just incomparable to any place that I have ever been anywhere in the world. But with its isolated type beauty, with its unspoiled natural landscapes and fresh winds and such, also comes an alienation or an isolation from other creative people and what's going on, what's being produced in urban areas, which is something that I miss at times because I would like intellectual stimulation. But the physical nature of the work takes an extreme amount of time. And if there are other people around, I'll find, and plus this works in with this idea of it's hard to get out into the studio and really get to the physical work, that one will put off and do many of the things that he shouldn't be doing when he should be working at a precise work. And if people are around, I find that I'm inclined to do this. I not only am isolated in my own little studio, I become almost paranoid in the idea of isolation and working on my own, because I become extremely upset when people interfere with my work. Also with my work, I feel that my work is extremely intimate, and someone watching me do an intimate thing bothers me. Therefore, I don't want people around when I'm working, because I become somewhat timid and embarrassed by their watching, and I won't do many of the things that I feel that are necessary things to do. I think once before I was quoted in an article as saying that on working on my works, it's not as much painting as making love to them, because on so many of them, it's not like on an easel up and down with this impersonal feeling, but I work actually on top of the objects, right on kawaii, right on the ground. Consequently, I'm working with mostly natural colors, which come right from kawaii, and this makes for another intimate relationship between the island and the work and the artist, too. For so many years I was caught up in the technical end of it. And in being caught up in the technical end of it, even on kawaii, I was still terribly caught up in the technical end of it, because not only where there are many painters that are forced with the creative problems, they can go to the store and buy color, or they will. And I was as interested in the production of the color and in the technique and controlling the technique, plus trying to make it into a contemporary form of expression. I started out using absolutely nothing but what materials that were on the island. Many of these colors were not good. Some were very, very successful, some were not successful. So in the amount of time and the work that has been going along, of course, I have learned as far as chemicals and chemistry and such goes for taking out color, and I have picked up on other different types of color. Therefore, it's evolved to a very sophisticated form of making my own colors. But in making my own colors and in using natural colors, it doesn't mean that I only use plant materials or go through a boiling process. But these materials which can be used, the hue is extracted or made into a particular form of color, and then that color is used just as commercial color would be used, or commercial hue would be used. So it's not just things from the island, but many of the things are things that I have to send to other places for, and many of the things do come from the island, and many of the things are works that are processed and are prepared in a chemical form themselves. But I do not use color that is prepared color, such as Tintex or RIT or other commercial type colors. Therefore, it can be a mixture of different forms of application and making of color. You see, so many people have a feeling, we all want this thing to be permanent, forever and ever. People will say to me, well, will they last? Well, what's last? I mean, 1 second or 150,000 years. It's just longer, but it has lasted because of being done. So I try all of the processes that I know to make them as durable as possible. If it is plant material, well, lichens and mosses and such, there's no real season on it, not in actuality. But the color that's produced from lichens and mosses comes more readily at different times of year. There are certain purples and well, maroony type colors that come from lichens, and it's a lichen which grows closer to the sea, and on a limestone type rock produces a different color than the ones that grow more up in the mountains at a higher altitude on lava rock. So This type of material, of course, has no real season, such as growing, but using flowering type materials, which different types of materials can be used, like this marigolds and such of that nature, of course, does have more of a growing season. But of course, here in Hawaii or on Kauai, there's not the difficulty with a season such as one has in more of a temperate climate. So it's evolved to the point now where it isn't that much of a problem at certain times a year. I try to do it and get a big storage of it so that I have enough to work with, so that when I am working toward an exposition or an exhibit, I'm not going to run out of color. But this does happen at times, and then perhaps I have to fill in with other types of color. I think that one could definitely say that there's an enjoyment in it. Even the growing of the garden and such, going out and picking up, being in the middle of nature, definitely has great bearing on it, and it is something that I really enjoy. But then I do enjoy coming over to town or going to the mainland and searching out different chemicals that are necessary too. But I do like to be out as much as I possibly can. This actually, to begin with, you see, many years ago I was working with in a different medium, and I was very interested in natural color because there were so few people in the entire United States that worked with it. I've always been interested in mixing things together and such, even with cooking and different bits and pieces of that nature, and spices and such. So the combination of growing it and working with it and being with it and gathering it definitely does have a direct bearing, and it's part of my nature too. I like doing it also. But the frustrations, many of the frustrations are terrible technical frustrations that I have in producing some works, and these come through in some of my work. But I think that there are very few of my works that are actually depressing or morbid. I think that most of my works lift people up. Most of them are terribly idealistic in their feeling. I think that they have a way of filling persons with great strength, spiritual strength and joy. I work just 24 hours a day, and I think that it's difficult to say, oh fine, you know, I'm out in the studio, click, I'm the artist, and now I'm going to do all these painting, and click, it goes off. Because there are many times when I'm eating that there are problems that have come up, visual problems that in my mind are working. At night I'll wake up about certain ideas, and one can't stop this stream and turn it off and on, but there are days that are more productive than other days. I find that a typically good day, or a typically productive day, would be one of the days when I go out and know exactly what I would like to accomplish, and then come somewhat near to it in actual physical work, and clearing up the emotional excitement of getting it down onto a flat surface. Before doing each work, there's an awful apprehension to me, an awful fear of starting it. And I find that perhaps each day starts this way, that trying to get out into the studio to actually physically start the work is hard to do. But once I'm out there, and once I begin, then I'm all right, usually. But if I hit one of these days where I get out there and still nothing's happening, I try to work as much as I possibly can. But if nothing is really happening, the best thing to do is just go away and forget it. But I do have a rule of discipline in my work that each day I must go out in the studio and do something, if it's no more than just cleaning up the studio, because that can be a habit too, that of staying away from the studio. And it can be a very bad habit because it's very easy to go away from. I mean, it's very easy to stay away from, particularly when there's so many beautiful things to do on Kauai that doesn't make for this unpleasantness. That in Indonesian, batik means wax writing. The traditional type batik in any India, China, or Indonesia always works with a dye resist process, which means that color is applied, and then when one reaches the tone of color or the hue of color that one likes, that particular hue is preserved by putting a resist over it, which could be wax or shellac or plastic. It could be anything that another color will not get through and other moisture will not get through, to hold that particular color. And then that color is reworked to another color, and this process is one step upon the other, until finally the entire thing is stripped out, which means taking off all the waxes or the resist material, and then turning it back into the form of a fabric or a material again. And I must also say that the type of batik that I do is not the traditional type of batik, that any batik maker is terribly upset with the way that I handle my work. I don't immerse things. I use brushes, and I work exactly as a painter. But a painter would say, oh, but you use resist materials, which is not like the traditional painter, therefore you're not really a painter either. So it becomes a batik maker in my own type of form. So they're just Wallace batiks. And there are many people that will come to me and say, well, now, how was this done, and in what method did you do it? And tomorrow I might reverse that and work in an entirely different kind of technique. Therefore, it becomes different within its own. There are many times that I'll work on a particular work and break all the laws of batik in letting the color dribble, in letting the waxes flow freely. And if there is an accident, it's a controlled accident, which I feel all paintings are anyway. You see, I feel that visual work, most visual work, well, all visual work, even from the most precise engravings, are freaks, because they weren't meant to happen, they were made to happen, and they are the creative person's own little accidents which he's controlling and creating. And the wonderful spontaneity, the wonderful naturalness of this abstract expressionistic form has to be fresh and new and alive, even though the work is going to take 3 years or 8 months. The important thing is to make it feel as if, to give the experience of the viewer the feeling that it happens right then, that it was made for them personally, that it happened in a flash of a second, that it's spontaneous and new and alive. When I first went to Kauai, I was living off the land, and I found that in getting up early, I worked best early in the morning, because in the summer, though it doesn't become unbearably physically hot, by 12 o'clock in the afternoon, it does become warm. And I found that I was working in the early parts of the morning when the sun was, when the winds were cool and such, But being Scotch and being reared in a Methodist Congregationalist type family, there is these puritanical aspects of working, not a compulsive type thing, and also being extremely frugal. I hate very much to see anything wasted. Consequently, I thought, well, wouldn't it be great I can take some of the fabrics that have to be rinsed and take them and rinse and then let the water run over them and completely remove all the color, and I can fish at the same time. And in fishing at the same time, I would be getting exercise and being able to get food, which I need, and also I'm not neglecting my work because it's there with me too. So there's this wonderful pride of being able to fill up each little moment, each little bit of space of time and such with as much as one possibly can. And when one looks at my work, you can see this too. I like for it to be full, not only to the edges, but in the depth as one can possibly, as full as one can possibly make it. So I think that this comes with doing that too, that I haven't been up to slippery slide, so all right, fine, if I have my work to take along with me and rinse it out up at slippery slide, this makes more sense than just going up to slippery slide for an enjoyable afternoon. I think that slippery slide is a very sacred spot. I mean, that's if you can get there without any tourists around, then you can really experience this. But there are certain areas there. On farther down, there is an area that I particularly like. That's one of my favorite spots, and I definitely feel where you can listen to the silence. You can actually hear the silence and feel the peace of the place, and the physical beauty just engulfs you. I think that it's the physical attributes of the place, of course, was one of the reasons perhaps that the old elite were carried up to swim at these particular areas. And as one goes up through this particular area, you can almost feel yourself going back into space, back into time, to a period outside of jet airplanes and smog and overpopulation and such. You can almost find yourself going, as you go into the interior of this particular island, you could feel that same feeling of going into sacred spots such as Benares, where the Holy of Holies for the Hindus are to I speak again of the Jade Buddha and different areas which have been given much respect and solemn feeling of the people. But this worshiping type quality and these good vibrations do give this kind of feeling. And I feel that Kauai has been particularly blessed by the gods. Success. Doing what I want to do when I feel like doing it, and I think that's the successful person. No, I'll put it this way. Yes, doing what one wants to do when they feel like doing it. But to be successful, one must know what he wants to do. So to be able to do what you want to, and to know what you want to do, and to be healthy, and to be wealthy, and to be able to have enough good sense to know that you have these things is perhaps a successful person. There are many things that I think of that I would like to do more, perhaps later on when different arrangements, but I mean, there's no great frustration. I feel that I have to go, or this goal that I have to work toward. But I think that the most important thing is to know what you want to do, and to know what it takes to do it, and then do it. And also, if you find in the middle of it that it's something that you're not particularly interested in, change it. Don't stick with it. But, I mean, material gain has nothing to do with it. Oh, money's fun. You can do things with it. But never take it seriously. It's very much like taking words seriously. They're only combinations of sounds. And realize that the word love is not love. It's just a symbol of an experience. My works are just symbols of experiences. The important thing is the experience. The important thing is that relationship from the work, the creator, and the person that's perceiving. Because one does not exist without the other two. You see, most of my works, if you notice them, there are areas where there are halves of them. And a person, I will be inclined, and I hope that other people see this too, that when they look at it, they have the feeling of, oh, here's this immense cosmic type thing, and a section of it has been framed. And this almost goes to my stretching and framing thing too, is that here is just a part of it, that this has been brought forward, but over here there is more that's even greater, and this is a part of it to show me right now. I want this same kind of an experience to happen with my paintings, that the person does not just accept it as an entity completely in its own, that there is more outside of this frame and outside of this stretcher that goes on infinitely into space. And therefore, that's what I feel is a successful painting to me, something that gives me this awe-filling and yet warm, understanding feeling. And I think that this is one of the important things for a person to really see, to remove from the technique, to be removed from the element of how long it took or how short it took, but to be able to accept the work just for what it is at that particular time. And if it works for you, great, that's the important thing. I find people many times that will say to me, but I don't understand it. I mean, this is one of the favorite things. I like the colors, but I don't understand it. Well, I don't understand it. I mean, to say that I understand my work or anyone else's work is a presumptuous type thing to say. I don't understand it. The liking of anything, the enjoyment, the appreciation doesn't necessarily have to depend upon the understanding of it, because there are many things that we can experience and enjoy to its fullest, beyond, and not really have to understand. And this is the same type of thing that I feel about this, that the important thing is for a person to grow enough, to open, to be able to accept and to flow with it, instead of bucking the current and fighting against it all the time and trying to understand, but just to be able to flow with it. And this is one of the things that I'll say to people, just look, open up, try to remove many of the prejudices that you have and accept the work for what it is, not for anything that it's supposed to be, but just accept it for what it is. So the things that I am painting are the things which will give a person, I hope, an experience which will weld this artist, picture, viewer together, because all are interdependent on each other. The relationship between the artist and the viewer has absolutely no meaning without the painting, and the painting has no meaning without the creator or the person who's going to accept it, and therefore it's difficult to take one without taking them all. So that my main purpose is to present an experience that will be a living experience for this particular person when they're in front of it. And the picture is not the prime importance. The experience that this person or these persons forever how long, whether it's just one or many that will get this experience, is the prime and important thing.